Hello there, and welcome back to Blocking Part 3. This is the last part of our four-part series on blocking. Today we'll be talking specifically about tips, practicing, and cleaning up our blocking, as well as some things that we can do to get started with blocking. My name's Xavier Liu. I'm the Interp coach at Bellarmine College Prep, and let's get started. So, how do we get started with our blocking? Here are some tips that we can do so we can get started with blocking our piece. However, before we do that, here are a couple examples of things not to do when blocking our piece. First of all, do not have blocking that is unclear and unclean, both technically speaking and substantive wise. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean by unclear and unclean technically is if your blocking looks very sloppy. For example, not picking up objects correctly, not having the objects fit into the shape of your hands, having objects that are too big or too small. All that are examples of being technically unclear and unclean. Another very obvious example is in duo interpretation, when partners are very technically unclean and unclear. A lot of times you'll have partners that are too far apart, that aren't very tight, etc., etc. Substantive wise, what I mean when things are unclear and unclean, it's when we don't have any idea what's going on. So, for example, if you are blocking out a part of your piece in which you go over and you pick up something from the floor because someone just dropped it, and you sort of walk around the room and you pace around the room and you don't grab onto anything, that's being substantively unclear. I don't know what's going on. Do not have characters that blend into each other. Again, as noted with part 2 as well as part 1A and 1B of our blocking series, you do not want to have characters that sort of look the same, sound the same, etc. You don't want to confuse your judge about which character is which. Do not drop objects, let go of objects, or change the shape of objects that you have in your hand. This is super important. I went over this in blocking 1B. Make sure that you don't just let go or drop your objects that you have in your hand. Make sure that the consistency of those objects are there. Next, again, don't make your objects inconsistent between scenes. An example I gave for this was, for example, if you are going and grabbing a book off of a table, when you return to that table at the end of your piece, and put that book back at the end of your piece, it should be on the same plane. That table should not have moved 3 inches to the right. It shouldn't have moved in terms of distance from the floor, right? That table is a solid inanimate object. That table does not move. Don't get loud for any good reason without properly building up that volume. What I've sort of been noticing with a lot of DIs recently is that people just start yelling without actually properly building, and it just comes at you. That volume comes at you and just takes you aback. That's not what you want to do. You want to build up. If you're going to yell again, you can do that, but no more than 5 to 10 seconds of that yelling. Keep it controlled. Do not have sloppy transitions or be out of sync during those transitions. It's super important, especially in those technically sound pieces or those very technical pieces like duo, HI. You don't want to have weak transitions where you're sort of flailing around. Everything needs to be tight and everything needs to be controlled. Don't feel the need to include blocking for the sake of including blocking. Sometimes standing still is just better than being constantly moving. Examples of this that I'm seeing a lot, some competitors are always washing their dishes, always folding their clothes, always drinking out of a cup when they're just standing there. Sometimes being still is better than having to do all of that or constantly doing all of that. be as real as possible. Awesome. So we just went over things that you shouldn't be doing. Now, here are some beginner's tips to actually getting started with your blocking. First, you should type up your newly cut script and triple space your line. It's super important that you triple space because that gives you enough space to write in between and in the margins. Refer to this PowerPoint or the other resources given to you, right? Sherwin has recorded and I have recorded a bunch of skills presentations, as well as like what are these event sort of presentations. Use them as resources to help you block. Begin to write down and jot in the margins or in between lines for a specific character or scenes. This is what you should be doing. First, what's the tone? What's the tempo? What's the pacing? Right? We went over that in our first blocking lecture, lecture 1A. Ask yourself, what's the tone? What's the tempo? What's the pacing? Do I say my lines quickly? Do I say my lines more slowly, neutral? How long should I stay in that sort of fast or slow or neutral mode? What's the characterization, right? What are the certain postures of a character? What do we want their body to sort of look like? What emotions, what physical traits, what emotional traits do they have, right? All of this is super crucial. Remember that we recommend that you fill out that big chart of different character traits, physical or emotional or otherwise. Use that to help you characterize your characters. Scene surroundings. Where does this script, where does this scene take place? In a kitchen, in a prison, a black backyard? What objects are in the surrounding environment, right? Like if you're in a kitchen, like you should be expecting tables, chairs, bowls, knives, forks, spoons, right? A refrigerator. What is in the setting and environment that we are performing in? Where are these objects, right? Like, are these forks and spoons in cabinets, or are they just sort of lying on the table that anyone can grab? How can we make this environment come to life, right? How can we liven up our environment? What are we noticing? What are we reacting to, right? If this is a multiple characters piece, right? How are characters mingling and interacting with each other? What's the mood, emotion, facial expressions, eyes for the characters in the piece? This is more not only to do with characterization, but trying to reflect the emotions and the mood that each character should have in the piece. Next, what is the intensity and appropriate volume that we should be using, right? Is this a super intense moment building up to the climax, or is this just a sort of exposition, right? A more neutral, not as loud sort of part or moment. Remember to always explore and always be creative, right? It's always great to see something new with Interp. It's always great to see something more creative rather than washing clothes or washing dishes all the time, to see something better and just more exciting and unique to look at. Now, here are some things that we can do while practicing and cleaning up our blocking. Always be asking yourself these couple of questions, right? Whether your blocking is clean, clear, and how blocking can be improved. Can blocking be tighter? Can it be more focused, right? Are we sort of all over? Are we scattered? Are we all over the place with our blocking? In regards to duo, can our fight scene or can our sort of transitions be a lot tighter, right? More focused. Is this blocking even needed? Sometimes, again, we just block for no reason, right? We just wash clothes for no reason. Do we need that here? Or is there a better thing to do? What are some ways we can make our blocking clearer, and cleaner, right? Both substantive and technically speaking, right? How can we make sure that when we block our pieces that the judge knows what's going on and it looks super clean and realistic? How can we develop a character more clearly, right? Like if there's a little girl in your piece and she's 6 years old, how can we make that specifically more clearer to the judge and more particular to that specific character? What facial expressions, emotions, body positions can we adopt for that character? What are ways where we can describe the environment and surroundings that we're in more clearly, right? If this is a kitchen, right, how can we perhaps design it such that, when you walk into the kitchen, you turn on the lights that are in this corner, and then the first thing that you do is you open the fridge and you pull out a couple things and you start making your breakfast, right? How can we make that and describe the environment more clearly? See if you can practice in front of a mirror to analyze your facial expressions and make sure that your blocking is clean and crisp. This is super, super important for duo, especially for making sure that you're synced up with your partner. Either way, whichever interp event that you do, it's super important that you know what you look like and that you know and you analyze your facial expressions such that your transitions, your characters, your surroundings, your environment, all that is clean and clear, right? I keep on using these words, clean and clear. This is especially true for blocking. We really need to make sure that all of our movements, all of our pops, all of our morphs, all of that is understandable to the judge and is also very technically speaking wise, very clean and very clear. I know that at Bellarmine, the Black Box Theater, it's a great resource for you. There's a side of the wall that is just a mirror. Use that, right? Use that to help you block. Use that to see if you're in sync, and see if your pops and your morphs are clean and clear. It's a great resource. Or just using any mirror in the bathroom or otherwise, it's a great resource for you. Last but not least, please utilize your peer coaching and meet with your captains and your coach for more insightful comments on how to improve your blocking. These folks on our team are always here for you. Reach out to them. If your peers can't understand what's going on, or if your captains or your coach can't understand what's going on, then we're probably not going to, or parent judges probably aren't going to be understanding what is going on either. So this is a great resource for you to reach out to and just ask for insightful comments on how to improve your blocking. So that was this for this video. If you have any questions, as always, again, ask your peers, ask your captains, and ask your coach for more help on blocking. Thank you for listening to our 4-part blocking series. I'm glad that you made it all the way till the end. And that's it for this video.